Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome. My name is Maria Pio, and I am co-director at the Godwin-Ternbach Museum at Queens College, where I oversee administration and education programs such as this one. I am delighted to introduce you to my co-director, Louise Weinberg, who curated the current exhibition, Human Nature, Portraits from the Permanent Collection, as well as Stephanie Lee, our museum and operations assistant. I know that given the circumstances, unfortunately, we can't all be together in the museum today, but I am happy to see so many faces and names virtually here in this space. If you have not had a chance after the program, I invite you to view our virtual exhibition on our website at www.gtmuseum.org. There, you will also find information about any upcoming events and programs that we have. I want to take a moment to thank our donors and funders, including the Friends of the Godwin-Ternbach Museum, the Avery Arts Foundation, the Matisse Foundation, Kupferberg Center for the Arts, and Queens College. Without their support, we would not be able to bring this programming to you all today. Lastly, given that we're all together in this virtual space, I just want to go over a few reminders for our virtual program this evening. Please remember to mute when you are not speaking. You may use the chat function to submit any questions, comments, and throughout the presentation. Please remain courteous and respectful, and any hateful language of any kind will not be tolerated. Well, this evening, we are very lucky to get to hear from my colleague, Louise Weinberg, who will offer us a glimpse into the curating process for the current exhibition, Human Nature, Portraits from the Permanent Collection. Working alongside Louise for the past year and a half, I can attest to her imaginative, detailed, and thorough understanding of what it means to curate from a permanent collection, and oftentimes even drawing inspiration and bringing partner organizations and artists to realize her vision. It is my pleasure to introduce you all to Louise Weinberg. So Louise, take it away.
Thank you, Maria, and thank you for everyone who is attending. As Maria mentioned, we do really look forward to when we can be in the museum again, but we're very happy to share our collection with you virtually. So just bear with me while I get my PowerPoint in place. Okay, now. So this all starts with Charles Willson Peale, inspiration and endless inspiration. When I think about collections and museums and what my role is as a curator and an educator, I think about sharing the treasures and literally going behind the curtain, hence the title of this talk. Charles Willson Peale was a magnificently gifted person. He was the founder of two art academies, the Pennsylvania Academy of Fine Arts and the nation's first natural history museum. He made a lifelong commitment to education through the arts and sciences. Early on, he studied with John Stuart Copley and Benjamin West and discovered an aptitude for portrait painting. He taught his three of his sons, Rafael, Rembrandt, and Titian. He also taught his brother, his nephew, and his niece how to paint, as well as his slave, Moses Williams, who later became a professional silhouette artist. He painted head and shoulders museum portraits for his Gallery of Great Men. This included Franklin, Hancock, Jefferson, Lafayette, and he painted 60 portraits of George Washington alone. In this painting, near the end of his life, this self-portrait, the artist in his museum, he is sharing his wondrous collections of art, science, history, and the curious, a Wunderkammer or Wonder Chamber. In the foreground, you even see the remains of a mastodon that Peale himself excavated in New York State in 1801. Next, please. So I became involved with the Godwin-Ternbach Museum as an outside consultant. Some of you may know this. In late 2018, I was asked to curate an exhibition drawn from the permanent collection on the theme of nature, which seems like a very extremely broad topic, and it is. When I was given access to the collection, I spent nights and weekends opening up boxes and drawers and pulling out screens and investigating the collection database on the past perfect system, and discovered almost 150 works from this multifaceted collection that told parallel and connecting stories and presented opportunities for teachable moments. It couldn't be any more critical to a teaching museum such as GTM. Marvelous works from John James Audubon to David Hockney to a 19th century Japanese ink drawing of a beetle to medieval religious ivory carvings suggested ways to bring conversations into the present about conservation, habitat loss, climate change, and the planet's future. In the process, I discovered many other works that I filed away back in my head about a portrait exhibition in the future. I was hired full-time as the co-director in September of 2019. Next, please. So the exhibition starts within the art storage room of the Godwin-Ternbach Museum. Where we're looking at right now is the inspiration for this exhibition. It's a marvelous portrait of a nobleman by Cornelius Johnson, who was London-born of a Dutch family and was known for highly skilled portraiture. The works he did led to many commissions of courtiers, landed gentry, and prosperous professionals. This work, Portrait of a Nobleman, exemplifies the skills that he had. I mean, the attention to detail, the wispy, ethereal quality of the hair against the lace of his collar. Next slide, please. And then the details of the sewn inserts into his clothing just show a remarkable ability. Obviously, as you can see, this painting has suffered some damage, and so I wasn't able to use it in the actual exhibition, but it was a true inspiration. Next. So what makes a portrait memorable? I'm using two examples from the Metropolitan Museum of Art, since they do have a great collection. So this is the portrait of Madame X by John Singer Sargent, which, according to Sargent, a portrait is a picture in which there's just a tiny little something not quite right in the mouth. I love what he said about that. It's as if to allow the vulnerable human component into a formal portrait. This striking picture of Madame X was so atypical for Sargent, known for high society mothers in fluffy white gowns surrounded by their children with tousled blonde heads. Madame X was known for her personal style, and Sargent originally painted her with one strap falling off her shoulder, a scandalous observation for the day. At the salon where it debuted, it created a negative reception among the critics. Sargent later thought that it was his best work, and he sold it to the Met. So there. And it's an indelible portrait of a dramatic personality. Next, please. And then we have the young Pablo Picasso's portrait of Gertrude Stein. Picasso famously said, "Everybody says that Stein does not look like this portrait, but that it does not make any difference. She will." This was quoted by Stein in the autobiography of Alice B. Toklas, where Stein said later on, "I was and still am satisfied with my portrait. For me, it is I, and it is the only reproduction of me, which is always I for me." That Gertrude. It is said that Picasso had Stein sit for him about 90 times over a period of 1 year, including one time when he painted out the entire face. This portrait is how we know her today. Next, please. So to make the sauce, you have to have the ingredients. So here we are back in storage in the art storage room, and I'm pulling out these screens and I'm looking at the variety of portraiture. And since the GTM collection is encyclopedic and diverse, I wanted to suggest and expand on what the idea of a portrait can be, that it's not something solely this very traditional one on the left, traditional and beautiful, of Charles V. The oldest work in the exhibition is a funerary head from Syria, Palmyra, circa 1365 to 200 BC. The most recent works in the exhibition are by Ralph Gibson from the 1970s to the 1990s, and a later work by Roger Shimamura done in 2000. I was interested in creating and drawing out different themes that resonated through the collection. And there are 11 in the exhibition, which you can read about on our website. But I wasn't interested in organizing the works by schools or by using a linear time frame. I was really interested in working within these themes that suggested themselves. I have a holistic, intuitive approach to the collection, seeing it as a totality in support of my thinking about those themes. A type of dreaming takes place as the layers and relationships begin to meld together over time. Next, please. So part of the discovery of working with these actual objects is turning them around during the installation and finding this on the back of this portrait of a prelate by Ghirlandaio, an Italian painter. And what we find are different labels created at different times, noting the title and the date, the name of the artist, who it was sold to. And if you make note of the label on the right, one of the benefits of working in a college is that I'm able to draw upon my wonderful colleagues that I work with. In this case, Nicola Lucci, who assisted with a last-minute translation in Italian for me. I wrote him a desperate email because I was thinking about the discovery that is made doing research about the works of art. So what I found out is, besides being a highly skilled portrait of a particular person, the label on the back is an invoice of the expenses incurred by a reseller of the painting. And it says expenses for the portrait of a priest painted by Friar Vittore Ghirlandaio from Galgario. Excuse my Italian. So acquisition is 160 lira, that's what they paid originally. Transportation from the countryside to Bergamo is 4 lira. Kappa or Kaffa is 8 lira. I'm thinking it's coffees, but who knows? The lining of the painting costs 6 lira. The cleaning costs 20 lira. And the total is a 198 lira and has been paid by the next buyer of the painting. Next, please. Part of the discovery and the research has to do with reading, and thinking and researching and thinking some more. My travels on this exhibition took me everywhere, from the Andy Warhol diaries to thinking about puppets. How is something made out of wood and cloth able to evoke the feeling of a human being or portray a portrait of a person? There's endless amounts of pathways that you can take to serve your theme. And so this, as you can see, took me in many different directions. Next, please. So when making an exhibition, there are always questions, and you have to weigh and evaluate which work ends up in the final exhibition. And there are many different factors that go into that. So I'm just going to review a couple of the works that I selected and why I did, and also why I didn't select other works. So on this slide, you see 2 works by Andy Warhol. The museum happens to own probably I'm thinking at least about 130 works by Warhol. So these are two large scale prints, both very strong, iconic images, very graphic. Obviously on the left, you're seeing Muhammad Ali, and on the right, you're seeing Sitting Bull. And I was immediately drawn to the Ali image. It's very simplified and graphic. I like the fact that he's not looking at you, you're looking down on him. So the point of view is changed, and I like that. But I ultimately felt that it had been exposed in other exhibitions and actually used on a lot of the printed material. So I selected the Sitting Bull, which is very strong. It's about 3 by 3 feet, and you see it in the museum on the title wall as you enter the gallery next to the intro wall. Next, please. These two works on the left is a WPA work. The museum has many. We're fortunate to have many WPA works in the exhibition, and I hope to focus on them in the future. But for now, this is a portrait of a worker. I'm not sure of the artist, but I felt that the work on the right by Lind Ward was a much stronger. It's a very intense, focused portrait. And it's from a graphic novel that Ward did in 1929 titled God's Man. Next, please. Here again, two really different works of art. The work on the right, on the left, I'm sorry, is a print by Jules de Goncourt, Portrait of a Lady. Kind of very typical in a certain way. And then I discovered this painting by Fega Blumberg, which was on a screen. I pulled the screen out and I was just immediately moved by it. You can see it's not in great condition. There are cracks in the paint, and there's actually pentimenti. You see the evidence that Blumberg painted over an older canvas, but it is such a forthright portrait. She almost appears to be a schoolgirl, and she has that severe kind of page boy haircut. It could be a selfie today. She could be a young person looking in a mirror today. And I like the fact that she's kind of worldly in a certain way and kind of knowing. There's a look in her eye that makes you think about what she was thinking about. It draws you in. Next, please. So on the left is a photograph by Julia Cameron Mitchell, who was a noted 19th century British portrait photographer, very acclaimed. And on the right is the Hans Holbein, which I did select. And it is a picture of George Brooke, the 19th Baron of Cobham. And it is such a definitive portrait. I'm so drawn to the way that everything almost fades away other than his face, his beard, his wispy whiskers, and he has a cast in his right eye, which makes you understand that this is an actual portrait. We are looking at that person, and that is so compelling. Next, please. These works by Ralph Gibson were part of a gift from 2019, actually. They're a very recent acquisition. They're a donation of 50 sea prints. Gibson is known for documenting New York over the years, and these are mostly images taken on the street. So they're street photography of a very high level. The image on the left, I picked at first. I thought maybe it was a billboard. There was something enigmatic about it. But then I realized that I think where Gibson's skill lies is something that's more direct, where you're an observer on the street. You're walking down the street and you catch something out of the corner of your eye that is a quintessential moment in your life, being in New York City. Next, please. These two pieces were very difficult choices for me. The piece on the left is a piece by Ray Johnson, the great, wonderful Ray Johnson, who basically invented mail art and the New York Correspondence School. And I was so delighted to find this piece. It's just marvelous that we have him in our collection. But ultimately, this is a case where I am going to save this for a future project that I'm thinking about having to do with mail art and the use of ephemera and book art and the idea of I will save that for a future date. So I selected the piece on the right, which is by Jean Swenson, and it is a broadside or a poster for an exhibition. I think it was Andy Warhol's second show in 1964 at Stable Gallery. So he's written a statement below titled "The Personality of the Artist." And the portrait is a photo booth photo that Warhol took of himself in a photo booth. And it's so unlike what we think of him. There's no wig, there's no factory, no entourage. He's almost vulnerable or he's distant. I'm not sure which, but either way, it's very appealing to see him almost revealing himself in a certain way. Next, please. So these works are by Lawrence Labduska, who was a highly regarded folk artist of the 20th century. He was really known for pastoral paintings of mostly animals and some humans and romanticized portraits of horses that were very well done. But these works come from a group of about 8 pieces, I believe, that are crayon and graphite on paper. So they have a different quality, they're more direct, they're less finished, less smooth looking, but they have a direct quality to them that is very appealing. His wife was often his model, so I believe this is she on the right. This is the work I selected. It's called Pool. I'm not exactly sure why, unless they're playing pool with a croquet set. But I love the fact that she's exclaiming here. We're not sure what's going on. The piece on the left, Spats, is an unusual portrait that, again, I will reserve to use at a later date. Next, please. So when doing research on the collection, it involves going down a rabbit hole, and then that leads to another rabbit hole, which may lead to another rabbit hole. By that, I mean, by reading and investigating, this leads to discovery about artists in the collection and artists outside of the collection and the commonalities therefore. So this work is by Roger Shimamura. I know I've discussed it before. It's a very important work, and it has a place of pride in the exhibition. It's called Yellow Rat Bastard, and it's really about the division of humans, how Asian Americans have been put aside, people of color in general. And so it's a very important work to discuss today. And again, for a college in a teaching environment, it's a great tool for us to talk about diversity and inclusion. Shimamura, part of his practice is that he collects ephemera and objects that have to do with stereotypes about Asian Americans. And he is a 3rd generation Japanese American who was born in San Francisco and has taught and painted his entire life. Next, please. So this is an article from a magazine, from Life magazine of 1941, How to Tell Japs from the Chinese. I apologize in advance. I know it's offensive, but I'm using this to point out, to make a point about what it is, what our job is in a college, in an academic setting, to make learning feel safe for everyone and to allow conversations to take place about issues of the day. So in the image on the right, you can see all of the notes delineating sometimes rosy cheeks and lighter facial bones. So if you go to the next slide, you can see a contemporary work by Wendy Red Crow, who is celebrating her Crow heritage These are images of 9 Crow chiefs in the late 19th century. They traveled to Washington, D.C. to meet with the federal government to discuss the boundaries of their nation. While they were there, they were photographed by Charles Milton Bell in his photo studio. Wendy Red Star is known for using imagery from her history, from her culture's history, from her family history, to make a point about today, about how we see other people today. And so here she's taken digital copies of these antique images that were, over the years from the time they were made, they were used inappropriately to sell tea, tobacco, and cologne, which is a travesty. And so she's restoring them. She's repatriating their histories and restoring their dignity. But she's also educating us about the sources of where these things come from. Like, for example, on the left, this jacket is inspired by European jackets worn by military men, and it is embroidered with Crow imagery. And she also is giving them their righteous anger back by saying, here, I can kick your ass with these eyes. So there's a wonderful balance of humor and the dead seriousness of restoring their histories to them and honoring them. Next, please. So the bones of creating an exhibition start with the checklist, which is created over a period of time. Sometimes I can go up to having 150 pieces on the checklist, and then I have to rein myself in, and I have to bring it down to reality of how much time I have, what is the budget, what can be done on a limited budget, and with the resources that I have. So I generally make a checklist that's illustrated, and I also make a PowerPoint, and I use that for my layout, my preliminary layout. And it helps me think, it makes it clear for me. The 2 images on the right illustrate the floor plans that I do for myself. And sometimes I'm working on these out of the office, I'm at home, I'm thinking about the pieces, what their sizes are, what the themes are, how am I going to group them? Are they 2-dimensional? Are they 3-dimensional? Are they upstairs or downstairs? Do I need pedestals? How much framing is there going to be? So imagine that in the formation of the exhibition, the checklist is at the apex of a triangle, and everything flows down from that checklist to create the components. So it's as if the checklist is the steel framework of a building that's necessary for creating the final product. So the floor plans, the section text, the intro panel, and the object labels all stream from the checklist. And of course, the drawings that I do at home are altered the minute I walk into the actual space. So then there's the going back and forth between what my dream is and how can I make it work in the space, which is the object of this problem. Next. So this work is by Toshitoshu Sharaku. Please excuse my Japanese. He was active during the Edo period. And if you will notice, he was active only for the period of 1 year, from 1794 to 1795. I found this story totally fascinating and felt like I wanted to share it with you. And this is the joy of the research, is finding these stories that are lying underneath and they're quietly waiting to be told. Sharaku was extraordinarily skilled, and his works were extremely popular with the public. 140 works have been identified as being created by him. It is thought that his career ended suddenly because the actors, the kabuki and no actors, the courtesans and the samurais, the I'm sorry, I lost the word. But the people that he was portraying felt that his portraits were too naturalistic. He didn't hold anything back. He showed all the flaws. He showed when someone was not quite beautiful. He emphasized these flaws in their facial characteristics. And so that is the thinking, is that is why he was banned after only 1 year. This work right here it illustrates a series that he did of kabuki actors. And later on after he passed, it was speculated that he was either a no actor himself, a poet, or even hokusai. And we still don't know. I was struck by this portrait because of the simplicity of the line, the simplicity of the forms, the attention to detail, but also the use of the black mica in the background, which creates at once an atmosphere and also almost a flattened sense of space. Next, please. These works are in the section on satire and caricature. The work on the left is by Rafael Cornell, and the work on the right is Miguel Conde. They are both of Mexican heritage. The Miguel Conde was another acquisition from 2019, which we were delighted to receive. And I was struck by how both of these artists were so seriously adept at suggesting the veracity of a portrait, but yet changing it and altering it with surreal or distorted elements. Each one has eyes that are off kilter. Amazingly, these two works face each other in the gallery, but they're in communion. And yet I don't know if these people know each other. So it's just fascinating. There's a sense of play and mystery in both of them. There's also a sense of space between a landscape and a mental scape. It's ambiguous. Next, please. These Polaroids by Andy Warhol are part of a group of about 80 Polaroids that are in the collection of the Godwin-Ternbach Museum, which is incredible. Always a cat lover, in 1973, Warhol's then boyfriend, Jed Johnson, persuaded him to get a dog, a dachshund puppy that they called Archie. That's Archie on the upper left. He's seen here with Wayne Gretzky, the hockey star, Diane von Furstenberg, the clothing designer, and Georgia O'Keeffe on the lower right with her late companion, Juan Hamilton. He's in good company. Andy Warhol became enamored with Archie. He took him everywhere, including to the studio, to restaurants, to gallery openings. The dog was always on his lap during meals with a napkin over his head, and Archie and Andy would feed him scraps from the table under the napkin. As Vincent Fremont, a Warhol insider, reported, he even used to take the dachshund to press conferences as his alter ego and would deflect questions to Archie that he did not want to answer. And hence Archie is part of our story here. Next, please. This portrait by Ben Zion, Portrait of a Woman. Again, this was another work. I pulled the screen out, and this modest size painting just immediately touched me. It's a very strong portrait, and the face highlighted against this kind of scumbled sea green background. I was completely drawn in by the angularity of the neck, the chin, the nose, the eyebrow, and even the earrings. And it occurred to me that this is a regal portrait of a woman that is not typically beautiful, but strangely compelling. Next, please. So again, we're back to satire and caricature, and everything in modern satire begins with Goyas Los Capricos from 1797 to 1799, which you see on the right of your screen. It is a series of 80 etchings into aquatints. These skewering officials and sycophants in high Spanish society, Goya's social and political commentary illuminates issues of the day by using a parrot to stand in for a human with the gift of gab. What a Gold Beak, reads the title, refers to the use of rhetoric to manipulate the gullible. Grapper, William Grapper, on the left and the bottom right, a 20th century artist known for his searing use of caricature, as well as to comment on the social ills of the day, created his own series, The Capricos, in response to Goya, but also more importantly, in response to his own political issues surrounding the witch hunts of the McCarthy era. So it was very personal for him. In the image owned by the museum, he skewers the legal profession in the work called Barrister, from a series of works on courtroom dramas. And the work on the lower right, he celebrates Joe Majorak, an American folk hero from Pennsylvania mythology, from yet another series that Grapper did. Nancy Weinberg on the upper right, yes, she is related to me, and she's an amazing painter. She portrays William Grapper, a personal hero of hers, from a series of 46 heroes and heroines, with 2 works by him in the background. Painted from a well-known photograph of William Grapper, we see the humor and humanity expressed in his facial features. This is loaned from my own personal collection. Next, please. No, you've got to be, where is it? Sorry. Okay, this is from this section, The Ancient Gaze. And again, this is the Funerary Head from Syria, Palmyra. And what can I say about this? This is a very tiny head. It may be only 5 inches across at the cheekbones. The minute I opened the box up and saw it, I was enamored, and I knew that this would find a place in the exhibition. It is timeless, it is ancient, it is contemporary. Her serene countenance is forgiving somehow. Next. And finally, these are 2 works, again, loaned from my collection, and I included them as I hoped to increase our holdings in photography. The proverbial discovery in the attic of these negatives, Larson's negatives, by his grandson, a Reuters news producer, was overshadowed by the discovery of 100,000 negatives by Vivian Meyer at an estate sale. And those were revealed in 2012, in the same year that Larson's wonderful New York City images were revealed. Meyer was, if you don't know about her, was a nanny in Chicago who quietly on her weekends went out with her camera and documented what she saw in the streets, and is now a complete phenomenon. While there's a documentary about her, there are numerous books, there are numerous shows. Frank Oscar Larson was lived in Queens his entire life. He was a banker by profession. And on the weekends, he too would go out with his Rolleiflex and visited neighborhoods all over New York City, City Island, Chinatown, Wall Street, Rockefeller Center, City Hall, and Times Square. And here, each of these works is such a portrait of that particular person in their particular field. The ticket taker in the window who has to wear dark glasses because the blinding lights of the Great White Way are getting in her eyes at night. And here's the fellow who is advertising the film at the Mayfair, Johnny Guitar. So it's a portrait of a specific person, but it also is, it draws you into the environment in which these people did their work. So next, we're going to just look at a couple of images of the installation itself. Here on the left, I just wanted to highlight some of the problems and some of the solutions, of how do you make these things work? This is the Immaculate Virgin. It's a medieval sculpture, very, very heavy. And we simply did not have the physical humans to move this sculpture onto a different pedestal. I am very, very fortunate that I work with my longtime collaborator, Arnold Kannevogel, who many of you probably know. And he is a problem solver to the nth degree. He's been in museum work for many, many years. And so between the two of us, we actualize the design, and he comes up with solutions on how to make, as they say in the Guggenheim in Spain, is the exhibition done, they say, is it Goog enough? So what we're saying here is it GTM enough? And so Arnold helps me reach those levels. On the right, you can see some of the smaller precious objects in the exhibition, including Buddhas and a portrait of Cheops, an Egyptian sculpture on the bottom. And then on the top, some of the smaller works from the ancient gaze section. Next, please. Here are pictures of the installation. You see the title wall with the intro panel, and that is the sitting bull next to it on the left. And then in front of you, you see the Roger Shimamura, the pop art section with Warhol and Lichtenstein. And then that flows, and the pop art actually flows into the section about sacred and religious works. And so it's just a very interesting way that things flow through this exhibition. On the left, on the right side, you see an incredible reliquary sculpture, which held the bones of holy bones of a saint, which is magnificently carved. Next, please. And then on the left, you see the wall of satire and caricature. Again, this is the Miguel Conde painting, which is very large in scale. It commands that wall. It draws you in with its mystery. And again, on the right, these are more shots of the first floor. Next, please. The detail you see is how the Polaroids end up being framed, matted and framed, again by Arnold, beautifully. This is The Crying Girl by Roy Lichtenstein on the bottom. And on the right is an image on the second floor. We're looking down on the exhibition. And that is it. So thank you very much. And Maria is going to open the floor up to some questions.
Yes,
and I
thank
think
you.
I'm gonna stop sharing my screen.
Thank you, Louise. That was,
Welcome.
of course, fascinating. Like I said, I get to hear about all of this as I work with Louise at the museum. And, it's really great that we are able to share this with all of you. One of the things that we want to do is ensure that everyone's included in this process too, or gets a little glimpse into how something like this comes together. As a reminder, of course, the museum unfortunately is not open at the moment. There is the installation in the museum at the time. So the museum, of course, is not, doesn't have bare walls. So there's, all these works of art are sort of mingling together while we're not there. But hopefully, we are hopeful, again, that, we will be able to go back into our space when it's safe to do so. And when we do, we will be sure to invite you all to come and take a look, again, when it is safe to do so. For now, we do invite you to see the works of art in the, some of the works of art in the exhibition and our virtual exhibition on our website at www.gtmuseum.org. Again, until we can be in the museum space together. Let me look through some of, I know there was definitely some questions that started. If you have a question for Louise, feel free to put it in the chat. Let me look through, of course, there's, Louise, you're getting a lot of, everyone thought it's interesting. It's wonderful to see the hidden gems of the museum, which is, we're very lucky to work in a museum that has this type of permanent collection, be able to use these objects to exhibit to our audiences and also for our student learnings. Let's see. Thanks so much for reminding me. Let me look. So, question from Nicola. He says, "Dear Louise, congratulations. One question from a curatorial point of view. You included some sculptures, so busts, statuettes, and full body in the exhibition. But I wonder, was it complicated to include a three-dimensional medium in the flat experience of the virtual exhibition? Did you need to take specific photographs for them?" And we can tag along if to answer this question, Louise. So I'll let you begin.
So yes, we did include three-dimensional works, and we had them photographed, and they are on the website. But what we are going to do is we will have a very small number of people visiting the museum, and a videographer, one of the Queens College videographers will come in and will create a walking tour of the exhibition. And so you will be able to, through that video, you will be able to walk up and approach the sculptures and look at them from at least 2 or 3 angles. So that will allow us to get more detail in there.
Just to add on to that, we want to give a quick shout out to Jackie in the art department, who has been so helpful in getting, helping us photograph all these works of art, editing them, and of course, allowing us to show you all these and putting them together in the virtual space. Let me look through other ones. Louise, Adina asks, is there any kind of art trend or era that doesn't appeal to you? Did it ever get in the way while curating?
Well, I have to say that I am a very big fan of the 20th century. And I feel a great affinity, and it probably shows in my curating choices, to see the social realist works, and the WPA works. And I mean, I think art and artists have a job that they have to make the world better somehow. And using their art as a bully pulpit is a way to educate and to draw out and to change people's thinking. So I think am really drawn to works that will teach us something. But at the same time, I'm also very much drawn to works sometimes just simply for their materiality. Sometimes folk art. You'll notice I have a fetish figure behind me in my dining room here. So, I mean, there's not any one thing that I really detest, but I would say that that's where my passions lie.
Great, thank you. We have a question here from Audrey. What is the size of the Warhol photo booth photo, and how is it shown?
It is actually about, I'd say, 18 inches tall, and it is matted and framed. So it's really, you know, it was a gallery handout which survived. Mm-hmm. And it's inscribed to Alan Pye from Andy Pye, because it was the gift of Alan Rosenbaum. And so, and it's a wonderful treasure that we have.
Great.
Thank you.
Thanks, Audrey.
I agree.
We have a question. I think this is a little bit more of a logistical question, which is one of my favorite things also, because, you know, when you're putting an exhibition together or programs, you know, you kind of, everyone just sees the final product, right? And it's sort of this wonderful experience. But Louise and I spend lots of time thinking about having other conversations. So this question asks, by Saul, what are the cost line items included in the budget for an exhibition? So Louise, you mentioned framing and pedestals, but can you give us a little bit more information on what else goes into when we're thinking of putting exhibitions together?
So sometimes there are loan fees, either if we're borrowing an entire ready-made exhibition or borrowing individual works. So there are loan fees associated. which there's insurance, there are insurance fees. Sometimes there are artist fees if we're commissioning works. There's transportation, either local or national or international, depending. Supplies, research. It really depends, but that is why the exhibitions add up. We are very fortunate in a certain way because we do have a collection that is in-house so that we can draw upon that. But at the same time, you know, works may need conservation or to get to the point where they need to be exhibited. So there's always upkeep on the collection itself, which is another consideration.
Great, thank you. And for that, I'll also add on, aside from just the very logistics, like Louise mentioned, of putting things, you know, together in order to have the objects in the gallery. Now we've also been faced with thinking about how to do this in a virtual world and how to do it in a way that could be accessible to all. So that's something that we've also been grappling with, that we've had to add more or less a line item to our, when we budget for an exhibition, thinking about how will this be put on our website? What are the resources that we need in order to do that? And of course, there's also, you know, budget items related to any educational programming that we do through the museum as well. So lots of little details to think about that really go into creating an exhibition such as this one. If there are any more questions, if you'd like to put them on the chat, feel free to do so. Or also, I encourage you to unmute yourself and ask Louise or myself a question yourself. So feel free to unmute if you'd like to ask a question, or again, put it in the chat and I can ask. See, any other questions? While we wait to see if there's anyone else, Louise, can you tell us maybe what was perhaps your favorite object while working in this exhibition? Is there one particular object that, or work of art that you were just fascinated by?
Well, I don't know if you can tell, but I think it's the Miguel Conde. And actually, apropos of that, he doesn't call himself a surrealist, which I think is very interesting. And that work is so compelling to me. It's called The Jesters, and I think it's so fascinating that he's with a seemingly simple approach. You know, he's not putting anything in high definition, but yet he's asking us to look at one hand of the figure on the left, and then on the right he's doing sleight of hand, he's juggling balls. And I just love the fact that this person is so skilled that he can just draw us in completely. But I have been in contact with him. He's not good with typing because I think he doesn't feel comfortable so much with English, but I'm going to actually Zoom with him in the future and I can report back on what I find out.
Great, that sounds wonderful. Emily says she's delighted to see objects that are not part of the usual canon in Western art as part of this exhibition. So do you want to talk a little bit about perhaps just conversations that we've had based on future exhibitions and the collection itself as a whole, based on, what are, thinking about any collecting practices, things that you're thinking about, any gaps in the collection that you've seen that you're interested in pursuing or thinking a little bit more about?
Yes. So the collection is very strong in certain areas, in textiles, in ceramics, in indigenous works. Photography is okay, not great. Prints are very, very strong. And, but I see, since I've been here, that I do want to expand on photography in general, because it's such an important medium. I mean, printmaking, everything done in modern printmaking, most of it derives from photography and photo processes. I also think that last year I pulled together a modest exhibition for Black History Month, and the works were great and timely, but I find that we are really lacking in works by African American artists and modern and contemporary Latin artists, I would say. So I can see there are areas where I want to focus on bringing in more work. And you know, in an ideal world, we would be commissioning works and we would be buying them and purchasing them. But for now, we're going to be dependent on the kindness of strangers, and hopefully we'll have some nice donations. I mean, we've been lucky thus far.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Louise. So we are getting right at the time of the end of this program. But if no one else has any questions, I just want to give a huge round of applause, a virtual round of applause to Louise. This is just such a wonderful exhibition. Again, please take a look at it on our website until we can be back in the museum and see it all together there. Again, thank you, Louise, for doing this with us tonight. This has been awesome, and I'm glad that we get to see what happens inside of your brain as you're thinking about these exhibitions, which I am always fascinated by, as you know. Just a reminder to everyone, we do have an event coming up. It's an artist talk in January of 2021. It's January 19th with contemporary artist Jordan Castile. So we will be sharing information about that coming up soon. Again, thank you all for being here, for taking the time to log in today and share this space with us. I hope you've enjoyed it. I will be sending out an email probably tomorrow with a short survey just to get your feedback on the event, which again will help us make everything better for you all. So thank you again. Please stay safe, keep warm, and happy holidays to all. Thank you.
Thank you.